When it comes to turbocharged rear-wheel drive based SUVs, about the last company that would come to mind is Mazda. Yet, alas, here we are with the all-new ground-up Mazda CX-90, and that's exactly what this is. So today we're going to find out whether all that work was actually worth it by taking a look outside, inside. I'm going to show you some of the features and technology in this vehicle. We're going to try and cram a bike in the back to see how usable or not this three-row SUV actually is. And then most importantly, we're going to take it out on the road to see what it's like to drive. Starting first with the exterior, because how can you not with this thing? There's really only one word for it, and that is gorgeous. This thing is beautiful from pretty much every angle, and it looks actually really extremely upscale compared to what you would expect from something like Mazda or a lot of other Japanese products for that matter. I really like what they've done with the front headlights, how they've disassociated the turn signal from the headlight itself. I also really like the minimal use of chrome, and it's not too much, but it does give enough accents. And then there's the color, artisan red, gorgeous color, really unique. I just think this thing gets extremely high marks in my eyes for exterior design, but I would love to hear what you guys think. Comment below as to whether or not you like the look of this thing. As we get under the hood, this is really where the big news is, the fact that this car is now based on a rear-wheel drive architecture. Now, you can't see too much here with this giant plastic engine cover, but underneath here, we're essentially looking at a 3.3 liter turbocharged inline-six engine. Now, they have a myriad of options, or I should say models for this car. So you can get a base inline-six engine, still turbocharged, so it makes about 280 horsepower. This one, the Turbo S, makes 340, so quite a bit of a bump. Now you can use premium gas on this, or you can use 87, but of course expect to get less horsepower with this Turbo S model on 87. They also have a plug-in hybrid version of this platform. So if you're more interested in a more electric experience around town, that has a 2.5 liter engine coupled with a electric motor, and it gets about 25 miles of EV range before that gas engine kicks in. There's of course going to be a different variety of fuel economies for all of these different options, but in general you're looking at about 23 miles to the gallon city and 28 highway, once again with a little bit of variance with which model you get, but overall pretty good for a three-row SUV. And after all, it is nice to have a bunch of different options for powertrain. As for wheels and tires, we get these beautiful two-tone wheels on this Turbo S model, and these are 21-inch wheels. On the base model, you get 19s. And as far as tire size, 275 45 21s, and these are Toyo all-season tires. Now, the fact that they're 45 series tires gives you a decent amount of sidewall, so that's pretty good. We'll see what the ride is like once we get it out on the road. One of the really nice things about the CX-90 is that it's not only beautiful on the outside, it's also actually really beautiful on the inside. This design is fantastic, and they've used a bunch of different types of materials in a really good way. There's this fabric on the dash, which adds a really nice touch. You have wood here, you have this silver trim, you have black and white leather accents. It's a really gorgeous interior and really feels, once again, upscale. I know that's something that we talked about with the exterior, but that really continues in here, and it feels well built. It has some nice ambient lighting as well to give you kind of that nice touch. The infotainment screen is very large and wide. You can use it here with this scrolly wheel, or you can touch it, which is really nice. Big thing to know there is that it has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. A quick note here, you can only actually touch the screen when you're stationary. Once you're moving, you have to use the scroll wheel. That is a little bit frustrating. But outside of that, you have physical controls for the HVAC, and they have a really nice feel to them. Once again, feeling premium. Maybe I'm overusing that word here, but it truly does feel upscale. And then I like this very simple layout for a lot of these buttons here for your heated seats, cooled seats, heated steering wheel. It's all just button based here. You don't have to go digging through a menu, which is really, really nice. The steering wheel itself, nice size and shape, has a bunch of controls on it for your adaptive cruise control and things of that nature. And then you get a all digital gauge cluster, which provides all the information you need. Will also give you a heads up as far as sensors all around the car where people are around you. And I will say one knock that I have against this is those sensors themselves. When I've been driving this, there have been phantom sensor notifications where sometimes it thinks a car is in front of me when I'm going forward, sometimes it thinks a car is to the side of me when there is not one. So maybe some calibration to do there. Not sure what the deal with that is, but that's probably the biggest complaint I could lob at this interior. Front seats, very supportive and nice. Rear seats also usable, at least in the middle row. I could sit behind myself. I have plenty of headroom. Overall, I'm really impressed with this interior. What more can you say? It's beautiful to look at, and it's also very usable. So before we take this thing for a drive, let's try and throw a bike in the back to see if it is actually usable back there. When it comes to three-row SUVs, let's be honest, they're big. And in a big vehicle, you would expect a lot of usable space. The CX-90 is no exception. However, the rear hatch design is in some ways compromised. First of all, it doesn't open that tall height-wise. I'm 6'1" and I can't even stand under the hatch without hitting my head. In contrast, look at how much higher the Honda CR-V hatch opens so I can still stand under it. Second, the rear hatch opening is a bit narrow compared to what you would expect from a vehicle of this size. I'm not able to fit my 29er mountain bike in the back because the opening is simply too narrow. Switching to my 29-inch road bike, however, I can fit without a problem. As always, if you enjoy the bike test, make sure you're hitting the subscribe button below so you don't miss future videos. When first getting into this CX-90, within 30 seconds of driving it, it immediately reminded me of something, and it didn't take me very long to pinpoint exactly what it was, and it was my old Audi Q7. I actually owned a 2017 Audi Q7 for about a year, and this car, the way it goes about a lot of its business, reminded me of that car instantly. The way it's built, it feels extremely solid, it's very quiet, the design is very good. You know, Audis tend to be kind of boring on the outside, but the interiors are really where those things shine because they're well built and they have an interesting and well thought out and easy to use design. And that's exactly what this car does. It has a straightforward interface. It feels super solid. It's got the same ambient lighting as that car. It's also very quiet to drive. Low road noise, low wind noise. So, and of course the size, right? It's a three-row SUV. So in many ways, right when I started driving this car, I was like, oh, I feel at home here. And I think that's a great compliment, right? Let's start off with that, how that's a great compliment that I'm comparing a Mazda with an Audi just straight up. I think the Mazda itself feels more upscale than the Mazda name would imply. So that's first and foremost the comparison that instantly comes to mind. And the other thing that my Q7 had was a 3-liter supercharged engine, which is a great engine for that Audi family, makes good power. And that's also present here. We have instead a turbocharged car, and Audi in my generation was supercharged, it eventually went turbocharged. Doesn't matter. Point is that it's powerful, it feels well built, it's solid. And this engine, just to say a little bit more about it, I think it is probably a little bit underrated, in fact. This makes 340 horsepower. I'm gonna get on it here. Yeah, feels pretty solid. I would say it makes every bit of 340 horsepower, maybe slightly underrated, probably makes pretty close to that in the to the wheels. So the engine is very strong, it's well built, it's solid. And you know what else? It has excellent body control. As we kind of go through these twisties, of course, this is not really how you're gonna drive this car, but we'll get into that. We'll get into the philosophy. There have been several outlets, I should say, who have said that the ride in this car is too harsh or too firm. And I have to say, overall, I disagree with that. Is it firmer than it needs to be? Yes, definitely firmer than it needs to be, especially for this customer base. So that's where it starts to struggle, where you can say, oh, I'm getting the point by here. Thank you, sir. So that's really where it struggles, because on one hand, depending on who's buying this car, maybe you like these linear inputs, maybe you like a slightly more firm suspension, a SUV that handles well like this one does. But maybe you're buying this for your wife, or maybe you're just someone who doesn't prioritize that kind of thing. Maybe it's a little too firm, but I don't think it's going to be a deal breaker for pretty much anyone, because you get this excellent body control, like I mentioned, confidence inspiring at any speed, so that's important, and it's not too punishing. So I will say I disagree with people who say it's too firm. Too firm for the intended purpose, yes, but not a deal breaker. The real problem with this vehicle is not in the base bones itself, it's mostly in the software and the tuning. Let me explain what I mean. Starting first with the steering. I get that they're trying to make something very linear and very predictable from a driving experience point of view. They want the inputs to always react the same. That's just a Mazda way. I get that. But what I don't get is that for this audience, this is ultimately a mall crawler, right? Nobody's driving up a canyon like I am unless they're getting from point A to point B. They're driving to the mall, they're driving their kids to school. And the problem with this steering is that twofold. A, it's too heavy. It is ridiculously heavy for the setting. Like this, there should not be this amount of effort used in order to turn this thing. And then what you're gonna see here, I mean, hand over hand twice to do this hairpin. It is one of the slowest steering racks I have experienced in a modern car. Look at this, doing the wheel shuffle here. I mean, the steering rack is so slow. And once again, they're going for linearity to where it will always react the same way. But what most other modern cars do is they have an adaptive rack, and they can predict based on how quickly you're turning, and some of them even use the map in front of you or sensors in front of you to know how much you're going to turn. And you may say, oh, that's not like a big deal to turn that much, but you really notice it in parking lots, because you're like trying to maneuver around the parking lot. The steering's heavy and you're just like cranking this wheel over to get this giant SUV around. It makes it feel not as nimble as it is. And I understand that that quick steering rack does sort of fool you into thinking a car is more nimble, but regardless of that, it's just too slow. Like it needs to react faster, regardless of who the customer base is, at least in my opinion. So the steering is quite mind-boggling to me. The other thing that has really been disappointing me with this car is this transmission. All right, I'm gonna put my foot down. I'm gonna say now. I mean, there's like a 2-second delay between this thing shifting and it actually doing something. And it's not just turbo lag, the transmission just shifts so slow. This is a brand new transmission Mazda designed from the ground up in-house. They did not outsource this to someone like ZF, which most other manufacturers do. They designed it in-house because they wanted specific packaging and had specific requirements. But I'm here to tell you that, come on, like it just does not respond. Realistically, no one's using paddle shifters. Even when you use paddle shifters, it doesn't really respond any better. I'm keeping this in drive like 99.999% of people who buy this car are gonna do. And that's a big disappointment to me, because man, what feels like antiquated transmission really can ruin a driving experience. Now maybe a lot of people won't notice that. Once again, I'm gonna put my foot down here. Now, that was like 3 seconds, and it dropped one gear and then it dropped another. And it's just the predictive technology of what you want the transmission to do versus what it's doing is not good in this car. I just have to be frankly honest. It's slow to shift and slow to respond. And honestly, that's my biggest complaint with this thing. The other complaint that I have with this car is that it inundates you with bonks and noises and notifications. It's told me about a winter storm warning the past 3 days. in a county over from where I am, not even where I am. So every time I got in the car, it told me about a winter storm warning. It will have phantom notifications when you're sitting at a stop sign or maybe even just a red light and cars pass in front of you. It's like notifying you that cars are passing because it thinks you're going to go or something. Even when you're just fully stopped, your foot is on the brake. When you get in the car, it's still in park and you haven't put your seatbelt on yet, it will beep at you incessantly. And I understand some of these things are safety, but it is too much. It's so much that you get frustrated with it, and then you turn all these systems off. Like you turn in the collision avoidance, turn off the collision avoidance because you're so annoyed with it constantly beeping at you. There's also like a distracted driver feature. Let me see if I can trigger it here. I'm looking forward. I'm looking at the road up ahead. Of course, now it's not going to do it on camera. But if you just as so much as like slightly look away at something, even though you're like being a responsible driver, you just slightly look away for a little bit, it will say, oh, you're a distracted driver, and it will bonk at you. Of course, it never does it when you're on camera, but it's been doing it to me constantly. So those are some things that really bother me about it, but here's the good news. The good news is that overall, this is a good vehicle. And overall, the base platform is bordering on great, I would say. So the good news is that most of my issues with this car can be fixed with software, can be fixed virtually, over-the-air updates with some code. Most of this stuff doesn't need to be ground up redesigned. So that's the good news. And I guess it's something that we should sort of expect going into this is a completely brand new platform for Mazda. It's not something that they've modified from a previous platform. It is ground up, rear-wheel drive based architecture. So there's going to be some teething pains, and that's essentially what we're seeing. So like I said, the good news is that the base car is very good. They have a hit here. It is close to being a hit. They just need to tune it properly. They need to fix the transmission tuning, fix the logic. They need to lighten up the steering, and they need to do something about these sensors because they are ridiculously overreactive. So overall, like I said, bravo to Mazda because this is a great car. It's a great car in the offering, in the segment. If you're going to buy it now, just know that you're going to deal with some of those teething issues. Maybe consider buying it in a year when they've done a little more tuning in this, and hopefully they will listen to me or maybe it's other journalists for that matter. So I appreciate you guys for watching. Let me know what you think in the comments below of what you think about the CX90. I think it's a beautiful design. They just have some fine tuning to do. If you've enjoyed the video and you've gotten this far, please consider hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one. See ya.